and welcome to Beyond the Mask, a trust building and listening tour. This is the fourth and second to last virtual community engagement hosted by Colorado Springs School District 11. My name is Rodney Gillette, and I will be your moderator for this evening. I am a certified ethical hacker. I am the CEO of Firma IT Solutions, and I am a U.S. Air Force veteran. I am the president of the Rotary Club of Colorado Springs and the president of the Colorado Springs Black Business Network. On the board for the Colorado Springs Conservatory, the Better Business Bureau of Southern Colorado, and the Colorado Springs Chamber and EDC. I am a husband and father of three, so shout out to my children, Mary Carmen, Tatiana, and baby Isaiah, and a shout out to my beautiful wife, Iris. I will be home as soon as this is over. So see you soon. Tonight's Beyond the Mask topic is schools at the center of a community ecosystem, diving deeper into the work of equity in schools, which continues to be a topic of interest across the country. We have a panel of district leaders, special guests, and experts joining us tonight who will be addressing your questions that have been submitted electronically on the Beyond the Mask online form. Let's start our evening with introductions of tonight's panelists. When I call your name, please wave so we can put a face with the name. Miss Darlene Daniels, Board of Education Director. Hey, Darlene. Mr. Chris Wallace, Board of Education Director. Hey, Chris. Dr. Michael Thomas, Superintendent, School District 11. How you doing, Dr. Thomas? Mr. Dave Engstrom, Deputy Superintendent, Achievement Learning and Leadership. Hello, sir. Ms. Phoebe Bailey, Assistant Superintendent, Personnel Support Services. Hello. Mr. John McCarron, Assistant Superintendent, Chief Information Officer. How you doing, sir? Mr. David Colicky, Executive Director, Education Insights. Ms. Judy Goodvagen, Executive Director of Special Education. Ms. Jennifer Harris, Executive Director, School Leadership. Mr. Corey Notestein, Executive Director, Student Success and Wellness. Ms. Alexis Knox Miller, Director of Equity and Inclusion. Hey, Alexis. Now to our special guest panelists for this evening and our partners at the American Institute of Research, or AIR. Dia Jackson, Fannie Lee, Itai Mitzrov, Femi Vance, and Carrie Kuiko. The AIR team has been working with School District 11 to build a system-level approach to equity within the education setting. Before we begin our question and answer session with our panelists, I would like to introduce you to a few D11 students who will be helping us out tonight with some questions. Odyssey Early College and Career Option Sophomore Josephine White, and Odyssey Senior Linnea Rivera. Starting with Josephine, ladies, please tell us a little about how this year has been for you.
This year has been hectic in the same way that it has for everybody. But I have been lucky that I've passed all of my classes so far. And I've been able to have higher communication levels with my friends. So I'm at least getting to see them every now and again.
This school year for me has been a learning experience all around. I've learned a lot about myself as a student and how I learn and reciprocate and retain knowledge that's being taught to me. One of the biggest struggles is some of my greatest professors are hands-on, and it's been kind of hard to learn from them because we're online, but so far so good.
Outstanding, lady. Stay encouraged. You're doing a good job. This is just prepping you for the future. This is nothing compared to what you're going to face when you're an adult. So just keep on trucking. Thank you so much. We all know there have been so many challenges to overcome with this pandemic, and we want everyone to know these conversations are a way for us to safely engage with our community during this time, to share thoughts and processes we are using to address these challenges. Even before the pandemic, School District 11 was making strides to improve equity in the district. with actions to hire Ms. Knox Miller as Director of Equity and putting together an Equity and Inclusion Steering Committee. Now I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Michael Thomas, Alexis Knox Miller, and the AIR team to provide us with more information on what this work entails. After you.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to host the fourth in this series of Beyond the Mask. And again, just want to thank our community for tuning in. We know we usually have upwards of 100 or so that tune in live, but we have thousands, literally thousands, that watch the stream afterward, and the conversations that are occurring, all throughout our community with regards to what's happening in District 11. And we really pride ourselves on making sure that we represent Colorado Springs School District 11 and bringing our students and our families and a broader community as stakeholders to these conversations to really help inform how we can improve our practice moving forward. As was stated, this has been quite a roller coaster ride this past year, to say the least. And I really want to thank our community for really leaning in with us. I want to thank our board as well for their foresight and governance, for really getting us through some challenging times. And to our two students that are with us tonight, again, I'm very proud of the two of you. And, Linnea is a senior graduating with not only a high school diploma, but also an associate in arts degree, a 2-year degree. And she's going off to a 4-year college to go into agriculture and environmental science. And then Josephine moved on me. There she is in my other side of the screen. Again, a sophomore, and at Odyssey Early College as well, and finding her pathway to success in life. She's got a couple more years with us before we send her off into her greatness. But the two of you clearly are learning and living during a time where, your kids and your kids will read about this in school. This will be a history lesson. So you're literally living history, and you're making history too, because you're demonstrating what it takes to be resilient and to really stick through life's challenges. And as Mr. Rodney said, this is going to prepare you for a lot of things that you'll encounter in your life. And so just congrats to the both of you, and so proud to be your superintendent. And again, thank you to our amazing staff. I say this every session, not just the staff that we have on the tiles this evening, but the thousands of other staff all throughout our district. You are making this year possible. Without each of you, we wouldn't be where we're at today. So I'm so thankful and appreciative for our teachers, for our ESPs, our cooks, our bus drivers, our custodians, you name it. You all are making this a really positive year given the challenges that we have before us. As was stated, we are engaging in a lot of work in District 11. So if we could just suspend COVID for a moment. Before COVID became a reality for us, we launched in deep engagement with our community, not only around our strategic plan, but also a brand new equity policy in our district. It was very clear to us that we could see the outcomes that many of our students were experiencing varied, and it varied greatly. It varied based upon your ability. It varied based upon, your race. It varied based upon your zip code and your income. It varied based upon whether or not English was your primary language at home. We could predict, unfortunately, based upon a lot of those factors that I just shared, how a student may do well or not so well in our school system. And that's not unique to District 11. That's an unfortunate thread through the entire K-12 system in this country. And I would say it's even bigger than K-12. We can see these same inequities in housing, healthcare, job, you name it. We are seeing a lot of challenges in this country. And this past summer, I think, was illustrative of kind of what happens when we reach a break point. And we've unfortunately had a lot of these break points, and we're still not able to kind of wake up and see what we need to do differently. But in District 11, we want to be responsive. We don't want to be reactive. We know the right thing to do, and we're committed to doing the right thing for all of our students and our families, and to lead by example in this beautiful city of Colorado Springs. So with this equity policy, our board kind of put a stake in the sand and said, this is what we expect. Every student will be held to high standards, offered high rigor, and based upon different challenges that they might be experiencing, we will find the structural resources and supports to allow them to find their maximum potential and become successful in whatever that means for them once they leave District 11. And that's kind of what equity is, kind of really boiled down in a very simple definition: giving students and adults what they need to be successful while here in District 11. And it means something different for each individual. And that's something that we are really proud to have, because now, no matter who is in these picture squares in terms of the staff, we actually have a policy that anchors us in doing the right thing for generations to come. Equally, we're looking at comprehensive academic master plans and facility improvements all throughout the district to really rebrand and kind of revive District 11. COVID has really kind of knocked us to our knees in so many different ways, and we must emerge a stronger and even better district to be responsive to the changes that will have to become permanent as we move forward in K-12 education. And tonight we're going to have a focused conversation specifically around some of the aspects that we're engaging in to be able to reach all the learners in our district. And as I shared, whether it's our learners that receive English language support or special education support or gifted, or if you come from a family that is struggling financially, and or you're coming from a family who might be workaholics and they're never around, and you just have that void of being seen and being heard and being present with folks. This is the work that we're engaged in to find out how we overcome some of those obstacles for our students and partner with them in doing so. So tonight we have a consulting group that we've been working with for the past several months, and that's the American Institute for Research. They're going to facilitate some of our conversation tonight as well. I do want to take a pause here and again introduce to our community. We've done so at a board meeting, but we have Ms. Alexis Knox-Miller, again, our Director for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And I got to tell you, she hit the ground running from day one. When we're looking at, for example, our comprehensive academic master plan, she is pointing out, maybe unintentional, but things that we're considering that might further create structural inequities and barriers to students finding their full potential, right? And just being mindful, hey, if we go down this path, we got to look out for this, this, or this. Like, that is her big push in this system. She's partnering deeply with many members of our community. I think about 20 to 30 individuals who kind of serve as an advisory committee to her. Just proud to have her as a leader in District 11 and a partner in this work, because without intentionality around this work, it'll get easily lost, right? And so this is why our district, or many organizations, have a role specifically around diversity, equity, and inclusion, because as one of the largest metro districts, one of the most diverse districts in Colorado Springs, we have to be mindful of that. And we're going to be covering a lot of that in some of our questions. And so do want to just let Alexis share a few words tonight, and then she'll introduce our guests with AIR, and then we'll engage in that conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Well, I'm very excited to begin this work in D11. I know that equity is the work. It's the work for how we close gaps. I know that it's how we ensure that our students do not have any opportunities foreclosed upon them because they just didn't have what they needed from us. I'm extremely passionate about this work and so excited to be a part of the team leading this work in this city, in this region. And with that, I'm going to introduce you all to the American Institutes for Research, Dia Jackson and Itai Mizraf. We also have Carrie and Fanny on the line, but they will be presenting some of the information that we've been hearing from them for the past few months, and it's been a pleasure working with them, so I'm going to turn it over to them.
Thank you so much, Alexis. Do you hear me okay? Yes. Can I share my screen? Would that be okay? Let me see. Okay, are you seeing the presentation? Yes, okay, well, hello, it's a pleasure to be with you today. My name is Itai Mizrav. I'm here with my colleague Dia. Here we are. On behalf of the American Institutes for Research, we're accompanying this important work the district has taken and supporting the district in going through this process of an equity audit, but then after that, developing an action plan for addressing systematic inequality in the district. Today, we're hoping to have a conversation with you. I have two other colleagues here with me, Carrie Cuccio and Fanny Lee, who are monitoring the Facebook, and I invite you to jump on the line and notify me if there's any question that has come up. We want to talk to you today. We want to share with you a little bit about what we're doing and how we're thinking about doing it, but mostly hear from you about what is important for you. And the other thing we want to do today is keep with us, take with us the logs from the chat and the Facebook and all the different mode of communications we have today, so that we can look at some of the things that are being said today. So please share and participate as much as you can. We're here as part of the process that was laid out by the superintendent and by Alexis with the adoption of the equity policy, and Alexis joining the team, and now going at this massive project of a comprehensive equity audit and a subsequent action plan for addressing systematic inequality in the district. And that's where we're hoping to come and help, to bring some of the what we know working so many years with districts and states around the educational policy drivers of inequality. And I'll speak to that in a little bit. But we're supporting the process, not leading the process, but supporting the process with expertise and facilitation, and working together with the community and the district in order to develop this comprehensive plan. We're looking in this work at a whole range of issues that have to do with policies, practices, programs that are malleable to change. So things like practices around educator quality and assignment to discipline and special education and gifted and talented programs, and access to programs in general, and diversity and inclusion in the district, the diversity of the teaching workforce, and then the experiences of students and staff and parents. And we're taking all of this data and to try and inject it to a process of sense making and trying to understand with the district what is it that drives inequality in Colorado Springs. I'd like to talk about that in a second, but first let me share this slide and say AIR to this work brings, as I said, a lot of research based around what drives inequality in districts. We work across the country with AIR has been here for 75 years, and we bring research around how gaps between students, race-based gaps, income-based gaps are manufactured through inequitable practices. But we also understand that if we don't want this to be just an audit, if we want this to be an actual plan, and if we want, this project to be a pivotal project in the trajectory of where this district is going, then the only way to do that is to balance that research base that AIR brings with local context, with the input of stakeholders and the community, so that everything we understand and everything we decide and everything that we determine together is based on the experiences of teachers and principals and district leaders and community and parents and students through a process we call co-interpretation. We're going to bring the findings from these different collections we've been talking about, but we're going to let you, the community, interpret those findings as opposed to those findings being interpreted in AIR. So in a way, the district is auditing itself just with the support of the team here at AIR. And I want to touch on just on this issue of why this is so important. And our initial work looking at gaps in the district have uncovered two types of achievement gaps that we already know exist in D11. Sometimes we prefer to call them opportunity gaps and not achievement gaps, because really that's what they are. The first type of gap we are uncovering is gap within schools. When we're looking within schools in D11, and we're seeing that students like low-income students and students of color and students with disabilities and English learners within schools have up to 40 percentage point gap in their achievement between them and other students going to the exact same school. But then we're also seeing gaps that are happening between schools, schools that have higher rates of English learners and higher rates of low-income students, and schools in the southeast area of the district are systematically performing lower than other schools in D11. Those two types of gaps are important because they will lead us to think about strategies that are both around closing gaps within schools and between them. And I want to say something, we often skip that part, but I think it's important to say, especially for a research organization. Race-based gaps have no existence in research. They are unrelated to science. They are unnatural. They are man-made. They are manufactured. There is no scientific foundation to any differences there should be that has to do anything with race. When looking at cognitive abilities of 1-year-olds, we don't see those differences at all. They are a product of life experiences. And as Dr. Thomas said, they are a product of many systematic inequalities we're experiencing in housing and in a job market. But our job in this audit, and what we want to do with you, is uncover the educational practices that are associated with this unnatural, man-made, manufactured, up to 40 percentage point gap. We want to see what is it in the day-to-day, the things that Alexis are already starting to point to. What is it that we're doing a day-to-day, unintended or unacknowledged, or what is it that we're doing that drives these differences, these disparities between students? And that's what we're going to do with the community. We're going to look at very straightforward charts and numbers and quotes from focus groups, and together establish what is it in our practices and programs that we're doing that creates such differences, and that would lead us to a robust plan of action that we're going to take together. So the way we're going to do this, we're now at period 1, where we're doing data collection and analysis. And soon come the spring, we're going to move to period 2, where we're going to do co-interpretation and root cause analysis with the community, understand what are we seeing and why are we seeing it. Then we're going to translate that to recommendations and strategies that the district can implement tomorrow in order to address that systematic inequality. And we're going to do a lot of implementation planning because we want the implementation of those strategies to be equitable, that this time the beneficiaries of the work are going to be the ones that need it most. And it's not going to be another project like any other project. And once we're going to start seeing that work established, we're going to move to period 3, which is around monitoring the work, and when we see success, scaling it up and sustaining it so we really see a new practice in the district. As I said, what we want to do today is really get your input and hear from you around what you're hoping to accomplish with this, I hope, pivotal project in the progression of the work in this district. So we have a few questions we want to ask you. I'd like to ask my colleague, Dr. Jackson, if you could lead us through the questions. And we have the poll information as well. I'll let you explain that. Let me know if you want me to let you share or you want me to keep sharing.
Sure, I'll share in a second. So we have a couple of questions for you, the community, and we invite you all to either respond on the poll everywhere and the link there. You could also text your answer to Dia Jackson 333 at 22333. But our first question is, what are you hoping that we would accomplish through this equity audit? So what are some of the hopes that you have that will come out of this comprehensive audit? So you can respond on the poll. The poll is open, and you could also respond on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, you can go ahead and drop it in the comments. And if anyone from the district wants to respond to any of these, that's great too. Let's see, we don't have any on the poll yet, but I think some folks are chatting or thinking about their answers on Facebook. So I'll go ahead and ask the next question. And again, this is, in our spirit of making sure that we are getting your input. Our second question is, describe your vision for the students in D11. What are the outcomes that you would like to see change in your district? So I will go ahead and share my screen. We have one response to the first question. Someone said they want to, from the audit, they want equal opportunity and outcomes for all students. That's awesome.
Dia, did you want to share your screen?
Yep, I was sharing and I think it went away. So
There
we go. Okay. So someone else has said, generate actionable items that will move the needle on achievement. All right, great. Got some responses coming in. I think you guys are getting the hang of it. And I will wait one more second before I ask the next question. Someone said, I would hope that students from our district gain what they need to participate fully in our local and national society and economy. That's awesome. That sounds very similar to the equity policy. So that's great. Let's see. All right. All right, I'm going to move to the next question. So the next question is, in your opinion, what specific areas are most important in creating equitable education for all students in D11? So what are some specific outcomes you want to see? Could be academic outcomes, outcomes for certain populations of students, students with disabilities or English learners. Maybe there's a specific gap or issue that you've seen that you really want to see addressed by the end of this work together. So we have some responses. Someone said a tangible plan that's set into action.
Yeah, and I see a response from Facebook. I hope that students on IEPs have more opportunity to be treated equally.
Great, thank you. Someone else has a question on, are there plans for getting younger kids? I think that's more around school reopening. Any other specific outcomes that folks want to see as a result of this work? Okay, so culturally responsive assessments. Great, that's a very specific outcome. That's great. That's what we want to hear from you. So we are opening it up so that, you know, you all who live in D11 and work and play in Colorado Springs have a say in what happens and what we get out of this equity audit together. Right, respect and understanding. There's another Facebook comment just saying that making sure that there are positive academic outcomes and taking care of the whole child, which is great. We're not swapping out social, emotional, or behavior outcomes for academic. It is definitely about the whole child. So that's a great point, very specific. Okay, so I'll go to the last question. And you guys are free to continue as things pop up to respond on Facebook or in the poll. I'll just go to our last question for you, which is, so our families who are with us this evening, how would you want to be involved in the audit process? What role do you want to play? How involved do you want to be? How would you want to be involved in the audit? Specifically want to make sure that your voice is heard as well. Okay, so no responses yet from families. And if there are any additional questions, comments that folks have. One question that came through is around communication. So someone on Facebook is asking how teachers were involved in the audit process.
Yes, teachers. So it's a great question. Teachers and families and students have multiple points of engagements through the audit. It started with focus groups that we made sure were diverse and representative of the district, where we asked specific questions that are guided by a framework of those common drivers of inequality. And we got some reflections, very good reflections, let's just say, from the community. The next point of engagement is that process of co-interpretation, where we're looking at the data together, and there you will have teachers and parents and students and principals as well. And then throughout the process of choosing strategies and planning, we will have engagement as well. And that engagement is involvement, right? It's being part of the leadership of this work. But then in parallel to that process, we're also going to continue doing these types of events led by the district, where feedback can continue to be heard, and the community hopefully could guide the process and create some or bring some feedback to the district. Alexis has also formed a steering committee, a representative steering committee that includes teachers and leaders and parents, that is providing constant feedback on the progression of the audits, and will also utilize its own network of the people that are on that committee to bring kind of additional feedback from the community to the process of the audit. It's a great question. Thank you.
Yeah, that is a great question. There was another comment in the Facebook chat that just said that D11 does a good job of communicating at multiple points, and that they would be interested in answering a survey or being part of a focus group. So I think we probably have your info. That's definitely good to know as we continue to collect data and analyze. Let's see. Another comment was that as a community member, I would like to know that parents of the most disenfranchised students would have their voices heard. And we are right there with you. So that's part of the goal of this activity of having, you know, this communication as well as many others that will follow as we continue in the audit. We don't want to just report out to you and tell you, here's what we found. As Itai said, our process is to involve you in the interpretation and the analysis as we're building these findings together. So,
and let me add to that. If there are, and you can share this now, you can share this later, you can share this in Facebook or in the chat or in the poll. If there are recommendations you have around ways to communicate that would allow you to participate, we would love to hear them. We're using best practices that we've learned in other places of how to communicate and when and in which hours, and all of these we want to hear from you as well. We're hoping to get the voices of people who don't normally participate in every single event and are not, you know, necessarily on the PTA or on the student committee, but from everyone, and especially those voices that are not usually heard. So if you have recommendations to us and what would it take in terms of hours and means of communications in order for you to participate, please share that with us so that we can take that under consideration and do that so you could participate.
To the AIR team, just a quick question. For this process of this evening's event, will this close or will this remain open for a period of time for families if they weren't live and they watch it back? Is there a way to provide that feedback on the backside?
We certainly can send a link for families who want to add their comments after the fact. This poll will close probably in about an hour. I've tried that out before, and it usually closes out kind of at the end of the night. Yeah.
I just thought about that when a parent or somebody from the community talked about, you know, I would like to participate, right? So how could we possibly capture that if somebody else is watching this after the fact? But yeah, this is, we'll have continuous points, you know, outside of the formal audit process to always be engaging our community in this work. So thank you.
And just before we're done, I can also share our contact information, Dia's contact information, my contact information. And anyone who wants to respond to any of the questions we raised today, feel free to reach out to us directly or to Alexis. But if you feel more comfortable to reach out to us, that is good as well. Feel free to do so. We're available. And I'll share our contact information right before we close.
Thank you. That
Great.
was very engaging.
Thank you.
Dr. Thomas and Alexis and Dia and Itai and the AIR team. That was incredible. As we start our question and answer session with our panelists, please note 13 questions have been submitted for this event using the public form linked on the D11 website. We'll begin with those questions, and if time permits, we can start to address any questions submitted in the Facebook comments section. We do have a moderator who will be watching for live questions as they are posted. I just want to remind everyone that this is a community conversation, and we ask that above all things, please be respectful with your comments. We also encourage you to be solution-oriented. And if you have a thought on how to positively move forward, please feel free to submit your ideas here on Facebook. Now, let's begin with the questions that have been submitted. What hiring practices does the district have in place to ensure student demographics are represented in their teachers?
Thank you. This is Phoebe Bailey. Over the course of the years, we have tried to go out and recruit from various states, Texas, New Mexico. We've even gone as far as Chicago, Michigan, all the various places in order to recruit employees that look like our students. And in that quest for going out and trying to recruit those employees that look like our students, we also tap our current administrators that look like our students to be a part of that recruitment team. So we have had principals, from various cultures and nationalities go out with us in the hopes that they make a connection with those individuals that are looking for jobs within our district. Now, the problem is what we find is they're excited about, coming and, we follow up with them, but there are various other factors that kind of impede our hiring of them or getting them into our district. Okay. So as a result of that, before the pandemic hit, we were about to launch our very first hiring job fair, the very first one. Everyone was excited, the entire human resource team. They were excited about launching that. And so we had to postpone it due to COVID, but it is definitely sitting, right off to the side, ready to move forward because all the planning had been done. We're ready to move forward when we are able, starting April 1st. So, we constantly, we know what the task is. We know across the state that the push is to have effective teachers that look like our students in the classroom in front of every student. So we are a part of that initiative, and we are constantly working toward that goal.
And to add to what Phoebe spoke to, I will say that as soon as I was hired, I was asked by the HR department to be a part of hiring committees and interview teams to look for things that may be inequitable in our hiring practices and to be a part of the conversation when hiring. So I will say that we have a bias towards action here. We know it's something that we need to do and need to improve upon. And we are working towards doing that.
Dr. Thomas, you have something to add on that?
No, I think they covered it pretty well. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
So now on to one of our super students, Linnea, you have a question?
So this question was submitted by a parent, and they asked, how is D11 defining equity?
I'm going to hop in on that one first.
ahead.
We are defining equity as making sure that all of our students get the resources and supports that they need to be successful. So when we think about equity in our district, we're thinking about outcomes. We are also defining equity, a further definition, as making sure that we are closing those gaps of the highest and lowest achievement categories and the racial predictability that often comes with those gaps. So we are trying to figure out, like, if we see that there are, for instance, in our district, Black boys tend to be disciplined more often than their peers, we need to close those gaps, and that becomes equity in our district. So that's what I think of as equity. How do we provide the resources students need to be successful? And also, one more thing, how do we start tearing down barriers and tearing down fences and getting to a place of like justice and liberation within our systems, so that we don't have to do like all this bending and twisting to provide the resources, that we are inherently a just system.
Yeah, I appreciate what Alexis just said. And the one thing I would add to that is the systems must be intentionally built. And that's a distinction, that we oftentimes might not really realize. And that is, it's not by happenstance. And staff hear me say all the time, we can't leave learning to chance. Even when students are doing well, we need to know why they're doing well so that we can replicate and bring it to scale. If they're not doing well, we can't just leave it to chance that, well, maybe they'll get it next time. We need to know why they're not doing well. And when we have these inequitable outcomes that show up, whether it's in terms of what happens with our students, or to the first question, what's happening with our adults in our practices, we need to kind of get to the core in the root analysis of what's happening that's causing those inequitable outcomes, and what actions can we put forth to eradicate that. And again, when we talk about equity, and I'll stop with this, yes, it's very much around some of the demographics that we talked about earlier this evening, in terms of how certain student groups perform or aren't performing. It also, as Alexis said, is our practices, our systems, our structures. Something that we've been having lots of conversation about, for example, in recent times because of COVID, was high school schedules, master schedules. Do we have an inequitable practice in terms of how we are designing high school schedules that are preventing students from reaching their full potential? That would be an example of an equitable process. How are we allocating resources, whether it's human resources or financial resources, to schools based upon the actual student need that's represented in that building? Those are, again, examples of processes. So it's about student demographics and subgroups, as well as adult practice systems and processes.
Does anybody from the AIR team wish to comment on this one?
No,
No.
I think that covers it.
Outstanding. Ms. Josephine, do you have a question for us?
I do.
Outstanding.
This one was submitted by a parent/staff member, and it's a little wordy, so we'll see if I can get it right the first time. How will the district measure successful equity work in a school district with so much diversity in cultures, socially economic, and geographic?
The Maasai people in Africa like to ask, how are the children, right? As a touch point for how well they're doing in their society. So when I think about how we measure this work, I'm always asking, how are the children? How are our kids? What are our outcomes? How are our babies doing? And that is really the measure for me. I know there are all these other systems and structures that we'll be looking at behind the scenes, but are we closing those gaps? Are we making sure that our kiddos have opportunities that they deserve? Are they in front of teachers who are culturally responsive in the way that they are teaching our students? Are we lowering our disparate outcomes with like discipline data and expulsion and things of that nature? How are our children? And I feel that's how we'll measure this work in our district. And if we let how our babies are doing lead us, I think we can't really go wrong.
And I absolutely second that. I just want to kind of reiterate that it is about outcomes. So it's, we're not looking for intention or some, meaning to do well, but, what are our outcomes showing is happening? And that really is telling us what's happening in the system. So for me as well, along with Alexis and the D11 team, it really is about, what are our outcomes saying is happening in our system? And what do we need to do to change those outcomes?
Thank you, Alexis and Dia. Itai, you have anything on that one, man?
The only thing I would like to add, we would look at outcomes, but we want to this time look at outcomes for everyone. And the purpose of this audit, the purpose of this work, I would say equity is not about the forest, it's about the trees. Particularly in blooming forests, if you have a few dried trees, those are the most vulnerable ones. And the way we look at data, the way we look at the experiences of people in this project, in this work, we're not going to look at the majority opinion. We're going to specifically look at what is being said by those who are not as many, by those that are not usually heard. If something is working well in the district, is it maybe not working well for one school or for one group of students or students or for a certain neighborhood? in Colorado Springs. So we're particularly in this, if so far we looked at kind of average improvement and wanted to be a fast improving district, that's not what this work is about. This work is about making sure that if there is improvement, it applies to everyone, especially those that don't drive the averages. And those that don't make us say, wow, we improved 5 percentage points. Those are usually not feeling those improvements. That's who this work is for. So I think that question was spot on. How are you going to think about geographic diversity and racial diversity? And we want to think of each and every one of those groups and see that whatever we're doing in that stages of sustaining and monitoring the work, that whatever it is that we're doing actually makes those people the beneficiaries of the work, and that's going to be on us to do.
Outstanding. So Alexis said, how are the children? That leads us to our next piece submitted by one of our students. Have you asked students their thoughts on equity from their perspectives and their individual school cultures?
Short answer is yes, and I'll expound a bit. Yeah, I mean, the best part of my job is interacting with our students, and my staff know it. If I can get out of the office and never set foot in there and be in schools with students all day, that's a dream day for me. But again, going back to what I mentioned earlier about intentionality, it's not by happenstance. Yes, there are a lot of casual daily conversations that happen with students in our classrooms all the time. They are speaking their truths all the time to us. But we also have strong intentionality in District 11. And one example is that I have a student superintendent's cabinet, and they are representatives from all of our high schools. And they are released every few months from their high schools to spend a couple of hours with me as an advisory board. And this is a group of about 20 to 25 students that represent the diversity you see on this WebEx tonight. That's who I see every few months, and they represent every aspect and region of our district. And just before we had to respond to the COVID crisis, my last in-person meeting with our student cabinet was a very deep dive on equity, because this was before our board passed the policy. They were drafting language for the equity policy. 2 students were very strong, active participants in the development of our strategic plan. And I always love to tell this story. Happened to be a senior at Doherty at that time who sat on our strategic plan development committee. She fundamentally changed the entire direction of the strategic plan with one comment that she made that made every adult in that room just pause. And I always tell our students, and I'll say it because we got 2 of them with us tonight, and you heard, my kind of boosting for them because that's what we're here for. These 2 young women that we see with us tonight and the thousands of others every single day, you have the power to literally change the world. And I know that seems big, so I just ask and encourage, our students, change the district. Start there, right? And again, our mission, we dare to empower the whole student to profoundly impact our world. That means the young people that we see here on the screen tonight and the thousands of others in our district, as well as the adult student learners, the adults in our system. We need to make sure that we are being intentional about bringing that voice. Students tell us every day what they need to be successful. I think our challenge as adults is adjusting our listening frequency enough to kind of hear what they're telling us. Might not all be right. We've got wisdom, years of lived experience that we can add to that perspective. But case in point, our equity policy and our strategic plan heavily shaped and influenced by the students of D11.
Also, we have students who are representatives on our district equity leadership team. We have 2 high school students And AIR has worked with, it wasn't as well, students weren't as engaged with this part of the process, but AIR has spoken with high school students during their focus groups, trying to get a pulse on equity in our district.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody else want to comment on this one? All right, cool. Linnea, you have a question for us?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
So this next question was asked by a parent. It reads, the pandemic has done nothing but increase the educational gap between the haves and the have-nots. How is D11 addressing this?
Yes,
Well,
David.
yeah. Well, thank you to the parent who asked this question, because this has been a very troubling time during this pandemic. And when I hear that question about how we're trying to address these gaps, and then even trying to do it in a pandemic, the first thing that comes to my mind is when we talk about equity, we talk about equitable access to learning opportunities and experiences. And one of the first things that we did as a district to try to address it is to make sure that we were providing equitable access to our students when they were home in a remote environment. And Mr. McCarron can speak to it pretty well of what we did about being able to get devices to every one of our students, and also to be able to provide data access, hotspots and Wi-Fi to every one of our students and to our families. And that's step one when we couldn't bring students into our schools, was to ensure that they could at least be accessible to us and for us to address it. And boy, if you had told me 2 years ago we would be 1-to-1 in 2 years, I'd say no way. But the pandemic got us to that point. I think there might be a question where you'll be addressing that later, Mr. McCarron. But the other part about equitable access then is, as we start bringing students, and that we can have students in our classrooms and have them back in our schools, because we know that some of our students, that the learning environment at home is not the optimal learning environment, even if there is technology and if there is Wi-Fi and data. And so we want to be able to have students in our schools. And right now we're not at that point to where we have everyone all 5 days a week, because we know the majority of our students learn best when they're in a classroom with a teacher on site, and that teacher can be working with them just in a physical setting and not in a remote setting. And so we are working on that. We still have our asynchronous Mondays of where it's remote learning on Mondays, and elementary schools open on Tuesdays through Friday, and then also the hybrid model that we have for our middle schools and high schools. But we are perpetually planning how we're going to get back to 5 days a week, and when can we do that. We're not there yet, but we know that is what we need to be able to do, to be able to address, to better address the gaps. And then there is the side about checking in with kids and knowing our kids and knowing how they are doing, and then engaging our students also. And I don't know, Corey, I'd like to kind of turn it over to you about how we've been checking in with our students, and to just know if where they are at in their social emotional learning. And then, boy, Jennifer, could I turn it over to you about just engagement, about how we were working with our teachers for engagement strategies? Corey, could you go first on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining tonight. I think David pointed on something I just want to reiterate. The pandemic itself has called out all the disparities in a really forward-facing way. And it's made us address many aspects of our district that need to call attention to the issues that we see, and how do we accelerate the actions necessary to help students and their families succeed. And what I mean by that is the game of school is different today than it was last year. Those that have figured out how to play school and be successful, whether they were fully engaged in that learning experience, has drastically changed for them. Those students that might have been able to be in the back or on the sides and completed assignments, showed up every single day, but not really love being there, but still passed, can't do that now. Engagement looks different, and the expectations for them have changed, and they are now struggling, right? So we have so many things that have flipped on us that we're really having to take a look about how our students engage in the experience. And I think one of the main ways that we've started to reach out to them, and this is, I think, what David is alluding to, is the student-teacher relationship. That is a primary driver in the success of our students. And without that positive relationship with an educator and that constant understanding of what their needs are, especially now, they will find themselves to be less successful. And one way we started the school year was outreach to families. Teachers actively engaging and calling on our families and checking in with students. We also asked them to develop plans for students that would look at what their needs are today and how might they learn in this online environment that might be different than the way they were learning prior to. One other thing that I think is less talked about in our system is our multi-tiered systems of support. So we reference that sometimes as MTSS. If you're out there with acronyms in your abbreviation sheet tonight, that really is a tool where our staff are able to come together and collectively help identify what a student might need to be successful. And that might be different for Corey than it is for Alexis, even if we're still struggling with the same type of academic problem, right? But my need to go above and beyond that might call for a level 2 or a level 3, right? So our tiered systems of support, where I'm getting more or less in any given moment, and being able to flow in and out of a system like that, where someone is checking in and providing that level of support. So David, those are a couple of ways that we have been working to do that. And I know Jen can speak to the schools themselves and what that looks like on a day-to-day as she's supporting those principles. So I'll turn it over to Jen for some more.
Thank you for that great question. It is a question that that we continuously are seeking to investigate and figure out how exactly are we engaging our online learners and our in-person learners as well in this new environment. The schools have had, I believe, their 6th fresh start to the new year. Every year we have a first day of school in August, and this year we've had 6 first days of school. And so really, the schools and the teachers have really worked to flex what would normally occur during a February timeline and really go back to setting up rituals and routines for kids, giving kids the opportunities to build relationships with each other, and just really focusing on the social emotional piece with the students first and foremost. In regards to our online learners, our schools have been doing very inventive things. We have one of our schools that has what's called the remote rescue squad. And if they start to see that any of the remote learners are starting to disengage, they do immediate home visits and see what that individual learner needs. This particular school has been known to deliver power cords, set up the computer right there on site to make sure that it's working correctly, and just incentivize the students to start attending school again. So I know there's many other schools out there that are doing a lot of these different creative things to engage their learners as well. And so also it's been a shift with teachers. Not only are they learning how to teach remotely, but how to engage the kiddos remotely, or students, I should say, remotely. And so we've got a wonderful curriculum and instruction team that has been working hard at pushing in professional development for teachers on what does engagement look like for the online learner, and how do you also engage your in-person learners at the same time. So lots of new exciting learnings that the teachers have taken on. It's out there that teachers are exhausted, and that's in the entire nation. Teachers are very tired. They're working really, really hard, as they always do, to engage all of their students and make sure that we are connecting with parents when we're starting to see disengagement. We're hoping now with the vaccine coming along that we're going to be able to pull in the remote learners back into in-person learning. We believe that's going to be really helpful to getting students back into being with their peers and really engaging again back into the classroom.
Yep, I think we all have high hopes for this vaccine. So thank you all for that response. So this next question is from a parent. I think the Board of Education is doing a tremendous job during this very challenging time. I'd like to hear from a board member on lessons they've learned during this time and how they plan to move the district forward. Chris, Darlene.
I'll go ahead and jump in first. I'll say first and foremost that I'm a little bit of a newcomer to the board. So I was appointed in November of last year. So there's a lot of catching up that's gone on. And I mentioned this in the previous Beyond the Mask meeting. I think what has been so encouraging for me is just to see the word grace become a common word, become a secular word. Just knowing that everybody is doing the best they can in a really, really tough situation. And so that's been really meaningful for me. And I've seen that in a lot of different directions, not just from the ground up, but really from the top down, central administration. And really what I look forward to and what I commit to making my mission here in D11, in addition to increasing student achievement, looking at enrollment, is really this equity work, finding the places where we haven't done right by the least of these, and finding the situations and the root causes, because I do believe in my heart of hearts that so often this isn't, we didn't get to a place of equity so often as an act of maliciousness. It was a lack of attention that got us here, and it's important that, to Dr. Thomas's point, we move forward with intentionality, because it was probably a lack of intentionality that got us to a place of inequitable outcomes. So hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you, sir. Darlene, anything to add?
Yes, thank you for asking. And that's a very good question. I think the lessons I've learned in a very tough year, it has been tough personally because of loss for us as a family throughout the nation, in addition to having students of my own. And I think the biggest part that I've learned is learning how to feel my feelings and find the love through it all. And on the other side of pain, there's beauty. And I'm working to make sure that I stay as authentic as I possibly can in the tough times, so that I'm representing the truth of who I am, and I'm being vulnerable in the middle of what I've just, it's been a rough year. So the team of D11 has been just amazing, working with the community, the parents, the staff, support staff, food services, bus drivers, everything that goes into being here and still moving forward. That's huge. And I have to give acknowledgement to the board before me. I'm going into my second year as a board member, but the prior board hired Dr. Thomas to take on this equity conversation. And I tell you, he has done exactly what he said he would do. And when you look at moving things forward and you have a leader and you have a team of people that are surrounding his vision, it makes it easier to stand forth and say, no, we're going to hold strong, we're going to hold the wall and move forward for what's best for our students, our community, our parents, and for each other. There's no way you can get this done without each other. So the year has definitely proven that, as well as the team of D11 has proven that, and continuously going to legislation, working with the state, working with being active locally so that we can fight for equitable resources in our community and be a voice for our students and everyone that's involved.
Thank you for that response, Darlene. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, good to see you. So we also have, I have time for one more, and I've got like 5 questions, and they're all like really deep. So I get to pick it. This last question is from a community member. How do you plan on overcoming the stigma of LGBTQIA topics in this ultra-conservative town? How are LGBTQIA students welcomed into your schools and made to feel equal? Are teachers getting any training on this?
So I'll start off with that, and then maybe Corey can add as well. And I'm just going to speak my truth, and the community's heard this, so it's no surprise. But my first year here, I inquired about the Pride Parade and festival here in Colorado Springs, and it was told to me that, you know, we don't participate in that, and no district participates in the Pride Parade. And it wasn't so much about wanting to be in a parade and take a position in a parade. It was very clear to me, at least in every district that I've worked in, the LGBTQ plus community is a vibrant, very, you know, engaged community. These are our students every single day that come into our classrooms. And I've always participated in community-based events to ensure that our community understands that we see you, we hear you, we love you. This is your home, you know, this district, in this case, District 11. And so being brand new, and I came just before the parade was launched, we didn't participate. I said, next summer, we're going to participate. And I invited our staff, if they wanted to participate, please join me. There was a lot of pushback, I think, to the question from the community member about, you know, being in a very conservative town. I understand the conservative perspective on a variety of issues, whether it's LGBTQ plus conversations, race conversations, focusing on geographic areas of our city that have been blighted conversations. I understand how that might not always fall into popular spaces. And I'll tell you, I got a lot of pushback from people, I'll just say, about why would we participate in that? And I think the deeper question that I would reflect back is, why not? These are our students, these are our families, these are our staff members. And if we're going to create a welcoming, safe learning environment where all see themselves as valued members of that learning community, this is an opportunity for us to tell our community, D11 is your home for that. And we had hundreds of staff and community members join us as we participated in just honoring the fact that we see all of our students in this community that we serve in District 11. And the outpour of support was immense, and literally brought tears to my eyes that I'm hearing no district has ever done this before. No one would ever acknowledge that we exist. Your district is doing that. Thank you for that. Staff members, students, you name it. They're all coming out in terms of thank you for seeing us. And that's half the battle. And what concerned me is that we've never been questioned about participating in the Veterans Day Parade, or the Holiday Lights Parade, or the St. Patrick's Day Parade. Never batted an eye that that was an issue, but here becomes an issue. And it's just the tip of the iceberg of the conversations that, as we become an increasingly diverse community, conservative or liberal, take out political affiliations, just as a people in Colorado Springs, in this world, these are the types of conversation that will create those open, safe spaces where all are welcomed and can see that they are valued. So to the community member who asked that question, that's just one kind of large statement of value. But I know that we also have, GSA clubs and supports for our students. We talk about I remember talking about having gender neutral bathrooms. That was a conversation that prompted some feedback. I'll just say it like that, right? Just so students would have a place to go to the bathroom, to just have a neutral sign. Those are some of the things that, we are not afraid to lean into in District 11 and into this broader community, because that's what it's going to take for us to be able to make sure that every student, every staff member feels like home here in District 11. And Corey, I know we're close on time. If there's anything you wanted to add from that student support standpoint as well.
Dr. Thomas, you've highlighted several things that point to proactive ways that the district, the staff within a school have taken to create an environment where our LGBTQIA students and staff feel welcome. But I will say the stigmas in themselves exist because of the cultural norms that we create. And as a community of Colorado Springs, we collectively will need to do more to bring awareness to the issues that I'm just going to speak specifically about students face for a moment, that our LGBTQ students face around anxiety, depression, mental health, suicide ideation, attempts, death by suicide, outnumber almost every other student group, period. And what we have in our community is a strong partnership with Inside Out. We have GSAs. And what we have within our schools is mental health professionals, counselors, social workers, psychologists, there to support students when they are feeling and struggling. And I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that those individuals are there to create safe environments for students to express what's going on for them. And I know that that is some of the most challenging things that bring forward for a young adult, a young child, a young student to express who they truly are. And maybe this is the first time that they're able to come forward and express that. And we need to continue to create spaces where they feel welcome. Any child feels welcome, but an LGBTQ student specifically feels welcome to walk in and express themselves and be who they are and be their true selves. Because if they're not able to be their true self, they're not going to feel like they belong. And creating a sense of belonging in an environment where students can be successful is what District 11 is about and will continue to fight for. But we as a community need to push forward and bring support and awareness to the challenges that LGBTQ students face currently in our society.
And we can achieve it. We can get through those challenges.
Absolutely.
In the words of the late Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka, we are the music makers, and we are the dreamers of the dream. I remember that. We've addressed as many questions as our time permits, but I'd like to conclude tonight by getting some final thoughts from our panelists as we wrap up. Dr. Thomas, after you, sir.
Yeah, I'll just close again by thanking everyone for your participation tonight, those who dialed in live and those who will watch this after the live stream. And just want to reiterate our deep commitment to Colorado Springs as being the premier district of choice right here in the central part of the city. This is your home, and we love our students, we love our families, and we love our staff. And it's not a responsibility that we take lightly. So again, thank you so much for your participation tonight and your commitment and collaboration with us. You know, I'll close with this. Years ago, I was with my daughter. She was probably, 8th grade or so. And we were at a stationery store. She wrote me into going to look in that stationery. And she came across this little plaque. And the plaque said, "Life begins outside of your comfort zone." Like, oh, Dad, can I get this? And for me, it was so profound that here's my 8th grade daughter who understands that growth occurs when you're uncomfortable, right? Great things can happen through discomfort. COVID was extremely uncomfortable, but great things can emerge from something as devastating as COVID. As Director Daniels talked about, the beauty on the opposite side of pain, right? These conversations are going to be uncomfortable. And this is where we're going to need our community more than ever to lean into that discomfort, because together we're going to find that beauty that Director Daniels talks about that is on the opposite side of that being uncomfortable. And the latest lyric of a song that I've been sharing in every public space I've been in says, "Not every day is going to be perfect, but no one says that they don't have purpose," right? So we are extremely grateful for the purposed days ahead of us as we emerge as a stronger and better District 11 for this community, Colorado Springs. So thank you so much.
Outstanding, sir. Do we have any other closing comments?
Only that we promised to share contact information. Would that be okay to do that now?
Yeah, sure.
All right, let me share.
Anybody else have closing comments?
I do.
Yeah.
I want to go back to a couple of things that Corey said, and he spoke a lot about belonging. And that is a key tenet to the work that we're embarking upon, is this creating this culture of belonging, so that we can truly ask that question, how are our children, and move forward in this district. Our babies deserve it when we're talking about our LGBTQ plus population, when we're talking about our minoritized communities. This is really life and death. When we're talking about their outcomes, this is life and death, and that is not me being over dramatic. It is that serious. So how are our children? And I hope that at the end of this, as we embark upon this journey, we will be able to say they are well.
Outstanding. Do we have anyone else with a closing thought?
I just want to say thank you from AIR, the AIR team. Thank you so much for allowing us to partner with you in this important work. Very important to your community. So we appreciate allowing us in your space.
Thank you for being in this space. It takes us all. Any of our board members have any closing comments?
In the words of Fannie Mae Duncan, everybody welcome.
Heard that. Hear, hear. Ms. Daniels?
I agree with you, Chris. Thank you. It does take all of us to move the conversation forward and to what I call hold the wall. It's us hand in hand, making sure no one breaks through without, us making sure no one messes things up for where we're going. Beauty for ashes. That's my thing.
That's it. That's it. Anyone else? All right. Well, I want to say thank you to all our panelists tonight, to Linnea and Josephine for their help. Thank you. I clap for you because you're awesome. And that's why I'm clapping, because you're awesome.
You guys.
Keep being awesome. Yes. And thank you to all of our viewers. Although community engagement looks different, as with most things this year, we know how important it still is, especially during these challenging times. There will be one more Beyond the Mask event in March, and we invite you to submit your questions for that event by visiting www.d11.org/Beyond the Mask. Please stay healthy and well. Have a good night.